now, and we're going to start. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. It's really such a pleasure to have you here. And I've been thinking a lot about what I would do with today's retreat and how I would focus our attention, right? Ultimately, the goal is that we are developing our minds so that we can manage the vicissitudes of life, whether they are as a result of the lockdown and fears associated with COVID-19 or in the long term, and things that don't have anything to do with those specifics. And I've been thinking a lot about where I would like to focus all of it. And for me, it's on the idea of space. Because right now, a lot of us are confined, right? We can't go outside in the way that we normally would. We might live alone. We might live with other people. But many of us feel, and I know this from having spoken to lots of people over the weeks, that they really don't have the space that they formerly did. And that can feel very suppressing and uncomfortable. But space, in some sense, is actually a state of mind. Even with a great amount of busyness and many people around us, there is the capacity, and it takes time to cultivate, to still feel spacious. And I would like today's practice to be focusing on how to give you a connection to space, even if you are not experiencing it physically right now. At the same time, for those of us who are living by ourselves, where we feel, oh, I have too much space in my life, then we might need space in our minds. We might be having negative thoughts, difficult emotions arising for us. And as we learn to balance the mind, to bring it back to the present moment, naturally a sense of spaciousness internally emerges, and we might actually really enjoy just being on our own. There is a sort of bliss that can arise with that as well. So what we'll do is a breathing practice that will help to bring forth this sense of spaciousness, and then we will bring it into the movement practice. So we're going to begin with Ujjayi breath, just first and foremost. I love this breath and it gives me a sense of spaciousness. So for those of you familiar with Ujjayi breath, can you just begin practicing? For those of you who are not, I'm just going to very briefly go over how to practice while the others are engaging it. So what we do is we inhale and we make this ocean-like noise through the nose. Like that. Just like so. Now, how do we make that noise? Well, all of us have fogged up a mirror or our glasses. So I want you to pick up your hand. Imagine that you have this mirror in front of you and you're looking at your shiny face. You inhale naturally and exhale. That's it. Long, not consistent and subtle. Inhale naturally. Let's do that one more time. Good. And release the hand down. Now, again, if you're learning, place your middle and your index finger at your throat. Inhale naturally, and I want you to imagine that there's a nose on your throat rather than here. I know that's a bit strange. So you're going to inhale, and I want you to exhale out of the nose and the throat. It'll make it easier for you to gently make that noise. Inhale naturally. Great. So for those new to Ujjayi, you're just going to be doing it on the exhale. For the rest of us, we're doing it on the inhale and exhale. And all of us are going to have our eyes downcast or closed right now. Noticing our bodies sitting on the ground or in a chair or the sofa, wherever we are. Feeling the shoulders where they're sitting, maybe opening them, rolling them back, lifting the chest, letting the chin ever so slightly hang down. And inhaling and exhaling Ujjayi breath. Now in yoga, there is this concept that breath is prana, is life force, and that you can send it anywhere. So I want you to take a moment and just notice, where in your body might you feel tense? And can you send the breath there? Can you send the breath to the places where it feels like there's tension, contraction? And can you notice the places within yourself that might feel opened and spacious? And now what I'm going to ask you to do is actively create space in between your breaths. After every exhale, I want you to say space in your mind twice. So a 2-second pause, and then breathe again. In this way, what we are doing is we are actively creating space within our breath, which has an effect on our mind and our body. Even if there is no option to create space in our physical life, and our mind does feel very fast and busy. So we're creating space in a place that it is always available to us between each and every breath. Okay. And can you even bring that space to a place in between the thoughts? If the thoughts are arising in quick succession so that they seem solid, as you have that space between each and every breath, can you allow it to permeate the thoughts? Can there be space there? Can you see the little gaps where one arises and one passes away? Okay. And now tell yourself you are going to take this space that you are creating into a physical practice. So as you're ready, and you don't need to rush, you have space as well in terms of time. Let's come to the mat, or whatever else you're using to do your practice. So here, I hope you can see me. You're going to continue this ujjayi breath, inhaling, exhaling, and then saying to yourself, space, space, over and over again. And we're just going to start to take some shoulder rolls. Inhale, exhale down, space, space. Inhale, ujjayi, exhale, ujjayi, space, space. And keep doing that. And it's like a reminder between each and every breath also to be present, because the mind to switch directions is so good at being able to intercept the breath and the attention to the body and bring us back into all of its worries and imagining. So as breath by breath we say space, space, we take it out of automatic pilot. And we help to rest in the here and now. Let's take a side stretch. Place the right hand on the side of the right hip. Lift up the left arm, soften the shoulders, and reach and breathe in this way still. Remember space between every breath. And release. On the other side. Space. And release. And we're just going to do something for a moment where we're not going to take the breaths, just to kind of lift the energy a little bit this morning as we're bringing it down and really allowing the mind and body to relax. What we're going to do is we're going to inhale up, exhale back, and we're going to do it in quick succession. Now, if you have any strain in your lower back or shoulders and are nervous, just move slowly, inhale, exhale, keeping the theme of space. But if you do not have any concerns, if your back and shoulders feel healthy and well, do it quite quickly. And here, inhale, exhale out, space. Inhale, exhale out, space. Great. And let's take a gentle spinal twist. Left hand on right knee, right hand behind, probably on the fingertips rather than the flat hand, because this opens up the shoulder. And as you twist through, continue. Inhale, exhale, space. And as you do this over and over, pose by pose, You are teaching the mind to come back. You are changing its natural habits of getting lost in thought. Inhale. Exhale, space. And switch sides. And come back around. And let yourself roll onto your back with the knees pointing towards the ceiling and the feet hip distance apart. And let's just begin by opening up the hips a little. Inhale. Exhale, come back around in space. Just this. And switch directions. So we're creating space in all these different joints in our body as well. One more time. Remember, space. So we're not moving and the breath is just held out for a second. And then place the feet flat on the ground. And we're going to come into threading the needle, which I love because I have sciatica, so it creates space around there. So take your left leg, have your left foot flexed, place the ankle just above the kneecap. And for some of you, you will already feel quite a stretch here. If you do not, you can draw your legs up and you can place your hands either behind the thigh, or if you still feel like you have more room around the calf, but not if you're lifting your whole body up to do it. You do want the shoulder blades on the ground. And as you're here, just continue. Inhale, exhale, space. And if you have tension in the body, you might send the inhale breath to those areas of tension. And release. And let's switch sides. So right ankle just above left kneecap. And again, this may be enough of a stretch. If it's not, you can take those other options as you continue to be with that ujjayi breath, that ocean breath, inhaling, exhaling, space. and release. And now we're going to inhale and we'll roll the lower middle and upper back off the ground. And exhale and roll it back down. And then again, there's this space, this pause. And then we do it again. We're going to do it 3 times. And on the 3rd time, we're going to hold up. And if the mind goes away into thoughts, judgments, worries, just daydreams, bring it back. On the 3rd time, tuck the shoulder blades underneath you, and if you want, interlace the hands and draw them towards the ground. The thighs are drawing in towards each other, and you're continuing to breathe in this way. And gently roll down. Hug the knees into the chest. Rock and roll from side to side. And we're going to roll all the way to stand. You can do it gently and use your hands, or you can do it strongly and come up to stand. I'm going to do the gentle version for me. And I know that this might sound strange, but we're going to use a little something from singing, which is the vibration of the lips. Because actually, the lips have so much real estate on our motor and sensory cortex, and when we move them, we really bring the mind here. So just a few times we're going to go, let's do that together. Okay. And then we're going to be really silly and we're going to go side to side doing it. And by the way, humming, and this isn't quite humming, but almost like it, seems to have a unique benefit that I'll talk about later. So it's sort of like humming. We'll go side to side doing it. It's harder to do it. Try it. It's harder for me. Maybe just one way. And then the other. And one more time. Okay. And before you think I'm crazy, we'll move into sun salutations. So I'm going to guide 6, 3 on the left, 3 on the right, but feel absolutely free to do your own style of sun salutation if you prefer. But after every movement where there is an exhalation, I want you to take a pause both in breath and in movement, and I'll be cueing that as I teach. But if you're doing a different sun salutation, you'll need to manage that on your own. I always like to have your feet hip distance apart, right, rather than together to support the knees and the hip joint. So I'm going to start like that. Place my hands in front of my heart, palms together. And all of us inhale. Right. Exhale. Space. We can all begin. Inhaling up. Exhale the Ujjayi breath. Bending forward. Feel free to bend the knees to support the low back. And space. Inhale up. Exhale, bring the left leg back behind you into the ground. Space. Inhale up. Exhale, make your way onto your belly through plank or any other means. Space. Inhale, rise up into Cobra or Sphinx. Exhale into Down Dog or Child. Space. Space. Inhale up. Exhale, scoop the left foot forward in between your hands. Right heel touches the ground. Space. Space. Inhale, look up. Exhale, bring the right leg forward to meet the left. Space. Inhale, your right leg up, straight back. Exhale, fold. Space. Inhale, reach, rise, and lift. Exhale. Space. Space. And again. Inhale. Exhale, hinge forward from the hips. Space. Inhale, look up. Exhale, right leg comes back behind you onto the ground, knee touches. Space. Inhale, look up. Exhale, come through plank onto the belly, taking that pause, that space. Inhale, rise up. Exhale into down dog or child. Space. Space. Inhale, look up. Exhale, bring the right foot forward in between your hands, left knee touching. Space. Exhale, inhale, look up, exhale. All right, left leg forward. Inhale, look up. Exhale, hold. Space. Inhale, reach, rise, and lift. Exhale. And I'm going to not speak, but just practice. You can follow along. So there's less words. If you have finished, lie in Shavasana on your back. If you're still going with me, continue. And when you're in Shavasana, inhale and exhale the space. I'm on my last one. But they are slower when you are taking this space between each breath. So maybe most of you are not finished, I don't know. So again, if you're finished lying on your back for a moment, just lying there, inhale, exhale, space. And now, wiggling your fingers and toes. Inhale, lift the arms up overhead onto the floor behind you. Exhale through your mouth. Draw your knees into your chest. And rise up again. Rise up again. I know maybe you don't want to. Maybe you'd like to stay down there, breathing with space. Take the right leg back behind you. Turn the right foot slightly in to look at the left. And we're going to take warrior two. So bending into the left knee. Extend your arms out, looking out over your front middle finger. And as we're here, because we're going to stay here for a little while, if you notice yourself feeling less spacious, like you just want to escape, can you bring the breath, the space between the breaths into that, to allow some of that to ease, to help your mind to just remain with the here and now. Interlace your hands behind your back. Lift up your chest and come into humble warrior. Relaxing the neck and head, pressing back into the right foot. Continuing to breathe. Your dry breath with the space in between. And inhale, rise. And exhale. And draw that left foot forward. The right one is forward. And have the energy on the inside of the foot rather than the outside of the foot. And interlace the hands behind the back. Pull the hands away from the bottom. And with the knees ever so slightly bent, or you can have them straight if you'd like. Stretch forward. Relax the neck and head. And again, inhaling. Exhaling. Space. And then place the hands on the hips, bend into the knees, and inhale, rise. Exhale through your mouth. And turn the left foot out. Bend into the left knee. Maybe you need to move the other one back a little bit. Sorry, it's the right knee. Extend the arms out. Look over your front middle finger, coming into warrior. I think somebody's unmuted themselves, so I'm just going to remute. Remember space between breaths. And then the humble warrior. Hands interlaced behind the back and the torso on the inside of the right thigh, the head hanging. Pressing into the back foot as you continue. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, release the hands, straighten the leg. Walk the feet forward and just inhale. And again. Good. So we're going to take a balancing pose now. Let's try dancing. And there are many different iterations of this pose. Right, so I'll do it from this side. Have your eyes focused about 2 meters in front of you. And if you'd like, you can hold on to something as well at the same time. Inhale, lift the right arm up. Soften at the shoulder. And then draw the left foot back. So this is one option. You can take the hand around the ankle. That's another option. You can draw the thigh away and also tip yourself forward. Whatever works for you. As you inhale, and exhale, space. Inhale, relax, and exhale, release. Eyes are still focused on the same point. Take stock for a moment of the speed of the mind. Does it feel spacious? Are there many thoughts? Just notice. Continuing to breathe spacious energy into the system. The mind will do what it will. You can't force it to be spacious. It needs its time. Soften the left shoulder. And again, option one is to then bend the right leg behind. You can take the hand around the ankle, or you can tip forward if you'd like. Whatever works for you. And rise up. Release. And inhale. Exhale through the mouth. Okay. And let's do just a little work with the feet, and then we'll come to sit. Or we'll come onto our bellies. Let's do that instead. So inhale, rise up. Exhale down, heels and arms. Space. Inhale, rise up. Exhale down. Space. One more time. And then we're going to lift out the toes and the arms to the side. Space. Space. And last time. Great. Okay. Come to the top of your mat. Place the hands in front of your heart, close together. Inhale, rise. Exhale, hinge forward from the hips. Place the hands on the ground and walk back so that you are on your belly. And while you are on your belly, you can place one hand over the other with either a cheek resting on the top hand or the forehead, and then the two big toes touching. And you're going to just breathe here. Inhale, exhaling space. Just that. And notice how as you inhale, the body slightly rises. And now, we're going to come into either Cobra or Sphinx. So, Cobra is with the hands underneath the shoulders, and we rise up, we pull the chest through the arms so that we are not applying pressure to the low back. And Sphinx is on the forearms. Please take the version that works for you. As we arch the back, it often is harder to have space between the breaths. So it's a wonderful place to work, to actually train the nervous system to be able to do it slowly. And potentially it has more of an effect as well on the mind. Because when something is a little harder, it does really bring our attention to the here and the now, even if it's slightly uncomfortable. And lower down only halfway, and let us do bound hand cobra. So the feet are lodged into the ground. Interlace the hands behind the back, rise up. Holding here. Inhale, exhale, space. And settling back down and pressing into child pose. So you can take wide leg child, or I tend to prefer myself, the knees together, the palms back with the back of the hand on the ground. Whatever version works for you. And again, working on inhale, exhale, space. Inhale, rise. Exhale. Space. And we're just going to take 2 more postures. So we'll do seated forward bend, right? And on this, if you feel that it's a little bit challenging to keep the back upright, you can always place a cushion. You don't want to completely sit on it, by the way, like that. That doesn't help. But just under the sacrum, you can do that. Flex the toes in towards the nose. Inhale, lift up the arms, soften the shoulders. Breathe in here. Space between breaths. Let there be space in the shoulders to draw them away from the ears. And then reach forward, but not down yet. Soften the shoulders back into the shoulder girdle. And again, inhale, reach forward, and then let the hands fall where they naturally will. It's not some major achievement to reach the toes, right? What's more important is that the chest is open, that you're focusing on this space. That you're continuing breath by breath, posture by posture, to cultivate this ability to see that you can create space, that you have the option to do that between each breath, and that in doing so, you actually have this knock-on effect where you feel more spacious in mind and body. And I haven't gone into much of the physiology. I'm going to just speak while you're there because this is a long hold. But when we have a little bit of a pause, what happens is, because we're not inhaling and exhaling immediately after, and the body is always creating carbon dioxide, we increase the levels. And carbon dioxide actually dilates blood vessels. It's called a vasodilator. So when you breathe in again after a little pause, what happens is you enhance oxygen delivery. And so your cells are working just a fraction better. And that internal health that you're providing can lead to a sense of greater well-being, i.e. space. Inhale, rise. Exhale through your mouth. We're going to roll onto the floor. We're going to make a T with our arms. We're going to have the soles of the feet flat on the floor, the knees pointing up towards the ceiling. We're going to cross the left knee over the right, and then we're going to let the knees roll to the right-hand side, and the neck can come to the left. Now, to be honest, I have a neck injury, so I just prefer to look up. It's not comfortable for me. If it's the same for you, you don't need to look to the left either. Just have the neck comfortable as you breathe here. And inhale, rise. Other leg crosses over, so the right over left, come to the left-hand side. Repeating. Inhale. Exhale, space. Just that. Nothing else. And inhale, rise up. And exhale into the lying position, into Shavasana, with the knees as far apart and the feet as the mat, right? So the knees are a little bit in closer. And the palms facing up. The arms away from the body, but not quite in a T, a little bit closer, like in a starfish position. And let go of any controlled breathing and just be present. And as the mind goes away at will, can you notice before you bring it back, space between thoughts? Can you see the little gaps? And as you shine the light of awareness onto them, can the gaps get bigger and bigger? When the mind is spacious, we feel spacious, no matter what is happening. I'm sure you've all had an experience like this. Maybe you were on public transportation and you were squashed, but in a really good mood. You actually felt fine, and maybe even warmth towards the people pushed in up against you. And at other moments, even with more space around you, just absolutely unable to manage the closeness of other people. It's so much about perspective. But we need to cultivate that perspective. We can't just snap our fingers and shift into it. It doesn't work like that. And so we are fortunate to have this time to do that today. Continue to watch the mind. Continuing to watch the mind, continuing to come back. And gently and slowly begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. Inhale, lift the arms up overhead onto the floor behind you. And exhale. Draw your knees into your chest. Hug them in. And then roll to your right-hand side in nesting position. And gently and slowly come up to sit. And for 5 minutes, we are just going to do inhale, exhale, space. But I'm actually going to cue you for the first 5 breaths, inhaling for 2, exhaling for 4, space. And we're going to make the space just a little bit longer now for 4 seconds. So we can have that grander benefit of the levels of carbon dioxide. And then after this, we're going to do another breath practice and then come back to this. Sort of like what we did last time, if any of you were in the retreat that I did last Saturday. So the inhale is going to be half the time of the exhale, okay? And when we elongate the exhalation, that has additional anti-anxiety effects for us. And then when we marry this with the space, it enhances it. So getting comfortable, I'm going to count in 2 and then count out 4. And after I do that 5 times, you can do 3, 6, 4, 8, as you wish. Okay, so let's all begin together. Inhaling Ujjayi, 1, 2. Exhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Space, space, space. Inhaling, 1, 2. Exhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Space, space, space. Inhaling, 1, 2. Exhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Space, space, space. Inhaling, 1, 2. Exhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Space, 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 space. Inhaling, 1, 2. Exhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Space, 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 space. And continuing. Continuing with a 1-2 ratio with space for the next 5 minutes. Just this. And if the mind goes away from the breath, just notice it's natural. And every single time that happens, and you notice and you bring it back, that's a moment where you are working towards cultivating your mind. So it's not a problem that the mind has gone away. It's an opportunity to reapply it. And even though the practice is pranayama, breath control, still keep a watchful mind. Keep a watch. And continue this practice as you just listen to me in the background, as I'm going to give you information about what we're going to do next and why. So yoga has this practice called humming bee breath, or in Sanskrit, Brahmari, which is like a humming sound. Traditionally, it's done at a very high pitch level, which you can do if you'd like. But we're not going to be focusing on that high pitch. It's going to be more of a Now, this is a yoga practice. It does help to break through thoughts, so it ties into this concept of space. But there is another reason that we're doing it. As you continue to do your Ujjayi breath with the space, you can just listen why. So nitric oxide is a gas that we have within the body, all over different parts of the body. And nitric oxide does lots of things. It also is a vasodilator, so it supports blood flow. But another thing that it does, which is very important for all of us right now, is it acts as an antiviral. And so we have a lot of nitric oxide, or what we abbreviate as NO, in the nasal passages and in the sinus cavities. And we believe the evolutionary benefit of this is that when we inhale the environment, especially pathogens, what happens is the NO can help to neutralize any pathogens so that we don't get ill. And we have a lot of NO, by the way, moving into the upper lungs and then slightly less in the lower lungs. The idea that we're trying to neutralize anything that comes in. Now, interestingly, we now know that when we hum, we increase the amount of nitric oxide in the sinuses, something between 7 and 15-fold. So the question is, might this have a value in respiratory infection and disease? We don't yet know, but this breath is useful nonetheless. And many people are starting to hypothesize whether or not humming might be protective, at least at some level. So we're going to practice it together for about 3 minutes, and then gain some of potentially the antiviral properties and definitely some of the anti-anxiety properties, and then resume again Ujjayi breath. So I'm going to be doing it for 3 minutes. Don't wait for me to start humming each time. We all have different breath lengths and abilities. So start together and then just continue on your own until I tell you it's time to start. Now, there is all kinds of things you can do with your hands with this, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to keep it really simple. So inhaling Mm. Okay, one more time like this. One more hum, and then resume your ujjayi breathing with a space. Inhaling, exhaling, space. And taking 3 more of these controlled ujjayi breaths. And then after the last one, just staying present as we're going to move into formal mindfulness meditation practice. And if before you do that, you need to release your legs a little bit, if you've been sitting for long, do go ahead. If you're sitting in a comfortable position, probably no need to move. The mindfulness meditation before we stand up again is going to be 15 minutes, just so you know. So we settle back in for those of us that are moving, changing position. We take stock of how we feel. And I find that it is often when we go into the mindfulness that the most amount of people log off, because it's difficult to just be with the bare mind. And I urge you to stay present, because it's here where you don't have something to grasp onto that the greatest training can happen. The agitation, the boredom, the irritation with yourself or with me, any of it. These are the moments where if you remain present with the discomfort, that your mind really becomes more flexible, learns to attend to the object even when it's not easy. And this skill that you develop then becomes invaluable. It permeates your daily life, the ability to be with challenge and show up and remain peaceful or equanimous. So just notice the breath. Notice the air entering the nostrils and exiting. And we're going to use mental noting to help our minds really stay present. So as we inhale and we notice we're inhaling, we say inhaling, inhaling. And we try to make sure that the label and the action of inhale are in harmony so that the mind can really just synchronize there. And as we exhale, the same, exhaling, exhaling. And if you notice a space, if there is one naturally, you can say space afterwards. If there is none, no reason to note it, because we are not creating anything during the mindfulness meditation. The mind and the body will create enough. It will create sensations, the body. The mind, many, many stories. And our focus is to just watch, not to change. And thinking will occur. For some of us, thinking will seem almost incessant. And again, this is natural. Human beings spend so much time cultivating thought that it is almost ubiquitous for us. So every time you notice thinking is arising, simply note, thinking, thinking, thinking. Highlight it, see it. It is not that you must stop it, but you must see the process rather than just being the thought. See the thought. Create space between you and the endless chatter of mind. And as the thought dissipates into the ether, come back to inhaling, exhaling. And in doing this, we are teaching attentional control. We are training the mind to return to the breath. And we are developing mindfulness, seeing the mind as it is, with all of its content and forms of thought, arising as processes, not necessarily truths. And then bringing mind back to breath. And we also try to stay still, not as a practice of austerity, but there is something about also not changing position. Unless we have real pain, we should never force ourselves to push through pain. That can be dangerous. But to be with discomfort and to allow it. The skill then comes off of the cushion and becomes something that can be embodied in daily life. And so we sit with stillness without scratching an itch, without shifting the position of our back, unless it's to make us whole again, right? If we've slumped. And then we continue to watch the breath and the dance with the mind pulling it away into all of its forms and content. Taking it just a little bit less seriously, all those thoughts, as we create space through our mindfulness to see it's just thought. And as a plaque at a monastery that I lived in used to say, don't believe everything you think. And so you can let go. If the mind has gone away, bring it back, notice, and then create space between the thoughts and your involvement with them. And let the mind once again reside on breath. Thinking, thinking, thinking. Notice if it's arising. Shining the light of awareness onto thoughts. Letting mindfulness slowly make the space between thoughts bigger. And we're about to end this formal meditation. But we're going to go into another form of meditation. So you can bring this awareness, this quality of mind that you've been developing there. And if you feel sleepy, which also can happen, or the mind's just difficult to grapple with, we'll have something to shift into that might help. So what we're going to move into, and take your time to come up, is walking meditation. For those of you that haven't moved your legs since we sat down, just be careful as you stand up, because there's always a potential that the legs go slightly numb and you don't even notice. So just stand up slowly for safety. And we're going to begin walking meditation, which is such a powerful tool, actually, to teach the mind to come to the here and now. If you have been to any of my classes where I've taught it, or last week where I taught it, and you just want to commence with the practice, I invite you to do that. For those of you who are new to walking meditation or to my method of teaching walking meditation, you might just want to watch first and then begin. So you don't need a big path for walking meditation, right? My path is going to start here and it's going to end at this little step here. So it's not long, Okay, and you also don't need a long path. I'm going to walk towards the camera in order to demonstrate, even though I will be walking back and forth. So what we do here is we notice the touch of the feet on the ground, and it's very much like the mental labeling of the breath. We lift the foot, and we mentally label lifting, and then we place the foot and mentally label placing, and then we say pause. We lift, we place, pause. Now, just like with the breath, we want this harmony between the label and the action. So there's a perfected synchrony between the mind and the mind's consciousness of something. We don't want that kind of going into automatic pilot. We want it perfectly aligned, the action and the awareness of the action. So when we are lifting the foot, our label matches it perfectly. Lifting, placing, perfectly matches the action. Pause. Now a few more things. The reason the pause is there is to avoid this tendency to lift up the other foot while one is being placed down. And that's how we naturally walk anyway. But in this instance, we want to give the mind just one object at a time so it learns to take its focus away from one thing and to perfectly apply it, to wait, and then to do that again. This is a wonderful training for the development of present moment attention. So that's very important. A few other things. You want to keep your eyes focused about 2 meters in front of you on the ground. If you're feeling very low emotionally, then on the wall in front of you, ideally not a busy wall. When you get to the end of your track, so if I'm here, you don't just turn around like that, because this practice works on developing momentum. So when you get to the end, notice you've got to the end. Feel the feet on the ground, take stock, and then turn exactly the same way you've been walking. Lifting, placing, pause. Lifting, placing, pause. And then again, resume. Now, if any of you are feeling agitated with the slowness of this, which can happen, then just walk more quickly. Right, left, turn. Right, left, turn. Until you feel that you can slow down. Okay? It's natural that that happens. And 2 final directions. Just have the hands at the sides. Right? Try not to move them too much so that the brain is really taking its primary input from the moving of the feet. Don't lift the legs up high. It's not a bird walk, right? It's as close to natural walking as possible, but with one foot being completely down. And then finally, if you notice that actually you're mentally labeling, but you're thinking, stop on your track, because that's the most prevalent object for you in that moment. And instead, mentally note thinking, thinking, thinking. And when your awareness is again on your feet, then resume walking. Let's begin now. And I'm going to, after a few minutes, add another element into this practice. You want to begin now? For a moment, just be on 2 feet, standing evenly, and stop your moving. You don't need to look at the computer. You don't need to break your concentration. Just listen to my voice. When you lift the foot and you mentally label lifting, inhale, Ujjayi breath. When you place the foot and you mentally label placing, exhale, Ujjayi breath. And then there's the pause. Again, when you lift the foot and you mentally label lifting, inhale, Ujjayi. When you exhale and mentally label placing, when you place, exhale, Ujjayi breath, and then pause. Do not speed up the breathing to match the walking. Slow down the walking to match the breathing. Please commence now. If for any reason you don't like the inclusion of the Ujjayi, you don't need to use it. You can just continue with the natural breathing you were doing before. And now, ever so slowly, it is time to come back to your seat. Do not rush to do that. Take your time. Walk back mindfully. Maybe even mentally note the process of going from sitting or standing to sitting, lowering. You can mentally note the movements as you come into the next pranayama section, followed by seated meditation. And if you do need to go to the loo very briefly, you might want to do it now. We're going to be going into alternate nostril breathing. If you're not familiar with it, you might want to wait until I give the directions. So I'm going to let everybody just settle nice and slowly. No sense of rush. So, alternate nostril breathing. The reason I am bringing it into today is that it is a very subtle form of breath. It helps the mind to become more subtle. And even though, ironically, it feels sometimes less spacious because you're not getting breath through both nostrils as we're so accustomed to doing all the time, what it does is it calms down the mind. And then the experience of that is spaciousness. So if you know how to do alternate nostril breathing, we're going to be inhaling, holding, and then exhaling out. So feel free to begin on your own. But for the rest of us, what we do is we close up the right nostril first. And traditionally, you have these two fingers drawn in like this, and the thumb is on the right nostril closing it. And then the ring finger closes the left nostril when we do it. Or some people like to have the index and middle finger at the third eye point. I don't really mind what you choose. I like this one better. So what we do is we inhale, we close the right, we inhale through the left. And it's important, according to yoga, that you generally begin with the left if you want a calming effect. So you inhale through the left, then you close and hold, and then you exhale through the right, and then you inhale through the right, and then you close and hold, and then you exhale through the left. So I'm going to cue us through inhaling for a count of 2, holding in for a count of 2, exhaling out for a count of 2 for a few rounds. And then if you want to lift it to 3, 4, 5, whatever you like, that's absolutely fine. I would say keep the hold no longer than 4 or 5 seconds, though, in between, even if you want to count the breath a little bit longer than that. So let's all have our right thumb on our right nostril, beginning now, inhaling left, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, exhale right, 1, 2, inhale right, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, exhale left, 1, 2, inhale left, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, exhale right, 1, 2. Inhale right, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, exhale left, 1, 2. Inhale left, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, exhale right, 1, 2. Inhale right, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, exhale left, 1, 2. I'm just going to cue 3 rather than 5, so continue on your own. For those of you who are finding it difficult to breathe into one of your nostrils, if it's just one, you can use the opposite hand, so often the left, to lift up the sinus cavity on the side that feels blocked, and often that will help. If it's both, you can lift up both sinus cavities and use your ring fingers instead of the thumb and the ring finger in order to do it. But if you really can't do it, then you can do Ujjayi breath instead, returning to that. And we're going to practice this for a few minutes. Inhaling, hold, exhaling, hold. And when you do the slightly longer breaths and the longer holds, it does have a more marked effect on your brain, right? You're getting a little bit less air in, you're holding, and then you're exhaling very subtly. And the brain reacts to this strongly because it's a big shift. And so the attention is really garnered by the brain in the present. So don't force it to be longer, but if you can, you will see that the effects might be more significant. But if it's uncomfortable for you, you just won't be able to continue. So make sure that you use a level that works. Continuing for 3 more full rounds. And after the third, releasing your hand. There's no rush at all. There's no place to be. And when you have completed that third round, if you have, we're coming back into the mindfulness meditation. There is no rush. For those of you still practicing, still practice. For those of you doing the mindfulness, you're resuming, and I'm not going to give directions until we're all together. But you're doing exactly what we did before with the mindfulness. Exactly the same thing. I think we're mostly there for those of us that I can see. And so, just watching this breath, which for many of us may be more subtle, our awareness of it more refined, and so that it is easier to be present, is simply inhaling, inhaling, exhaling, exhaling. Again, bringing the mind just to this, nothing else. And maybe be really interested in the breath. That helps. A sort of love affair with it. Its power to change your mood. Its absolute necessary moment by moment arising so that you are here. Breath giving you life over and over and over. No break from the moment you are born till you pass. Always breath. There's something almost magical about it, even if you take a completely scientific view. And so when you are interested in it, it's so much easier to remain present with the breath and to more clearly see the arising thoughts that the mind often thinks are a little bit more exciting or require our immediate attention. We are like gentle grandparents, noticing every time the mind goes out, seeing what was so interesting to it, and bringing it back ever so gently, time and time and time again. We cultivate this infinite patience with breath, with our minds. Come back, little mind, again and again and again. So we're continuing the meditation, but we are coming to the end. And as you are focusing on your breath, I just want to tell you a little story. Maybe two little stories to just highlight that we do have the ability via perception, via mental cultivation, to feel spacious in our minds, in our bodies, in our space, regardless of external circumstances. So there was once this man, who went to a mystic because he felt he didn't have enough space in his house. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to get that. Just continue with your meditation. Space between the story even. So this man went to the mystic and said, "There's no space in my house. How can I make more space?" So the mystic said, "Oh, you know what you need? You need to buy 3 goats and put them in your house, and then you'll feel more spacious." So the mystic buys 3 goats and puts them in his house. And he feels the opposite of space. They're banging everywhere, running all over the place. And he comes back furious to the mystic and he said, "I don't know what you're on about, but that made me feel anything but spacious." And he said, "Oh, my bad. You need also 2 horses in your house, and then it'll all feel more spacious." So the man gets 2 horses. They weren't cheap to buy, and he puts them in his house. And then it's just like becoming a zoo. And he comes back to the mystic and he said, "You know, I think your advice is just horrible. I'm feeling anything but space." So the mystic said, "Oh, my apologies, my son. I'm so sorry. You also need 1 camel. And then you have the magic recipe for spaciousness." So he brings in a camel as well, touching all the way with its head to the ceiling. And after a week, he comes back, this time really angry. And he says to the mystic, "You know, I think you're a fraud. I don't think any of us should trust you. I've had it with your suggestions." And the mystic said, okay. I'll tell you what to do now. Take all the animals out." He takes all the animals out. And the following week he comes back. He said, "I never realized I have so much space. I feel so spacious." Right? So it is about our perception. But the idea, again, that we have the ability to just at the snap of a finger shift that is not correct, right? And none of us are going to put all these animals in our homes and then release them back outside to test that shift. And rather it is this ardent and continuous process over and over again to be willing to show up, to take the mind away from the thoughts, to notice the thoughts, and to bring it back to the breath. And in that emerges an experience of space naturally. But it is a training. And I don't think there's ever been a better opportunity or a more important time than now to cultivate that for ourselves. Many of us within the yogic world might not be significantly affected by the lockdown, others are. But certainly we are seeing a surge of mental health issues across the globe, and they're expected to continue to rise. So even if you are feeling well, this cultivation in yourself will help you to support others. So I really think it is all of our duty to do so. The Minded Institute, by the way, has a host of short courses. If any of you are professionals and want to do like, I think 2 to 4 hour trainings we're running, some in anxiety skills, trauma skills, yoga nidra skills, how to run online sessions. So you can look at that. A lot of the stuff is free, is mostly booked for next week. So you might want to look and see what we have available. They've been very popular. Or, do whatever other work you feel is vital for you and for your community. It's been an absolute blessing to share this time with all of you. I'm sad that it stopped at 100 because I got over 100 emails from people that could not join. So for those of you that are here, I guess it's really fortunate. And this will be put up on YouTube so that everybody can watch it. You can watch it again. So now is the time that I open for questions. The ability to raise your hand feature so that we're just not calling out over each other is in participants, which is in the toolbar at the bottom. If you toggle over it and you click on participants, then on the right-hand side comes a list of people and also the option to raise the hand. So if anybody has questions or comments, please feel free to share now. If you just want to go about your day, that's absolutely fine. But I'm here for another 10 minutes to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, Ivor Wolf, I can see you have a question. Would you like to unmute yourself, or maybe I've unmuted you, Ivor, so you can just ask.
Yeah, hi. It's actually his wife, but I really enjoyed that. I've done quite a lot of yoga, but never tied to the meditation. Where can I go, or how can I practice more?
Like this style?
Yeah, I live in Wimbledon in London.
I mean, what I'm putting together, because I'm a Buddhist practitioner who does yoga, and I lived in retreat for a number of years in private silent retreat in Southeast Asia. So it's kind of my own meld. And I bring together the physiology and the breathing because I have a background in there. I'm not sure where you would find that. Definitely, right, doing the asana and then doing the pranayama and meditation is part of the yoga tradition. So somebody who's doing a very classical practice might have that. But with all of the mindfulness pieces and the physiology put together, I'm not sure. That's kind of my own little thing.
Do you do anything else online, though, like this? I mean, I don't mind paying for it.
Well, I have created all of these free stuff on YouTube. I've been doing lots of sessions. So if you go to the Minded Institute channel and you subscribe, you can see all of the different things that I've been doing since we've come into lockdown.
Okay, so it's a Minded, M-I-N-D-E-D Institute.
The Minded Institute, exactly. And I'm going to continue. Next weekend, I won't be running this retreat. By the way, one of my colleagues is going to do it through HealthFlix.
Okay.
We're going to be running weekend retreats every weekend for a while, so you can come back on the weekends, but you can also go on my YouTube channel and
Okay, thank you.
find somebody else doing it. I just don't know who they are. If I
Okay.
everyone know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Estella Alvarez, you're next. I can unmute you, so you have to unmute yourself. Your system won't let me won't let me do it. Estella?
It's saying I can't do it.
There you go. There you go, Estella.
Oh, there you go. There we go. Hi, hello. I wondered if you could just go over again the Brahmari breath and the nitrogen oxide, and also the CO2 and the alternate nostril breathing, and the thinking behind that, because I couldn't concentrate on that.
Okay, well, the CO2 and alternate nostril breathing isn't really a thing. It's just that CO2 is actually, we think of it only as a byproduct to expel. But what it does is it actually also dilates blood vessels. And if you have slightly elevated levels of CO2, it enhances oxygen delivery because you have a dilation of also the small blood vessels throughout the body. So it allows for a global enhanced capacity of delivery. In terms of the nitric oxide, so this does many things, but is also an antiviral, and it exists within the upper respiratory tract at quite high levels, including in the nose and in the sinuses. And research has found that humming increases the amount of nitric oxide from 7 to 15 fold. So like 700 to 1500% greater than when we just breathe normally. So the idea is, since things like COVID-19 are respiratory issues, that potentially, and there is not research supporting this yet, potentially it may have a protective effect. Okay?
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks very much for these retreats.
It's my pleasure to run them. Okay, so now Lisa Banbury. Hello, Lisa, can I unmute you? Let's see if I can unmute you. Yeah, okay, Lisa, you're unmuted.
Oh, hi there, Heather. Thank you so much for the retreat today. It was absolutely wonderful. I was just going to ask the same question as the previous person, really, about the antiviral properties potentially from the humming. Do you think is that over a prolonged period? If we did humming, say like 10, 15 minutes per day, that may increase those properties?
We don't know, and I don't want to make any promises. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a physiological piece that we're starting to put together.
Uh-huh.
And when the SARS epidemic occurred, they were looking at how nitric oxide could be used within treatment. But then the
Mm-hmm.
question remains, would, for example, something like humming be able to increase the nitric oxide enough in the particular areas that we would need it within the lungs in order for it to be beneficial? So
Yeah.
all I would say is it can't hurt to add it into your practice, and we don't yet know if it's going to have efficacy and
Yeah.
going to prevent infection. It's just something to be curious about. If you go to my Facebook page, I've put a
Yeah.
series of papers there yesterday regarding this, and you can
Oh,
look.
great. I'll look them up. That's brilliant. So thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Okay, Daxa. Daxa next. I'll see if I can also unmute you. It seems to be faster. Some of you have muted your, oh, there we go, Dax.
Hi. Thanks, Heather, for today. I've had a really lovely time. The mindfulness and sitting in one place, I can do, but after a certain point, my legs start to go numb, and I just don't know. Then I can't concentrate on the breathing anymore. My mind just keeps going to my legs. Is that something that gets easier with time?
For most people, yeah, it does get easier with time. It's not an uncommon experience either. And, if you have very gross body sensations, gross in contrast to subtle, not like disgusting,
Yeah.
sensations, it will also pull the mind in and will help with the mindfulness. So if that's very strong for you, it's okay. You can direct the mind there. Generally, what happens if you engage in longer periods of sitting, you actually have some growth of new capillaries. Not everybody likes the look of it, but I'm proud of mine, around the knee area, and that will help with blood flow and usually reduces the numbness. The process of growing new capillaries is called angiogenesis. And so it's better providing oxygen to those regions. But yeah, if that's a really strong object of attention, go to it. But the secret and the challenge is, can you be with it without hating it? Can you watch it with intrigue and interest? Because if you hate it and you strongly want it to go away, then you are losing the value of the practice.
Okay.
And it's attempting to be interested in it while also disliking at the same time, then you are doing what you need to do to shift that relationship to the experience. Okay?
So you should sit with it, not sort of unfold and refold your legs in a different direction.
I mean, if you have to, but
Ideally not.
ideally no. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Really common thing that new meditators go through.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Gilbert.
Hi Heather, thank you so much. Absolutely lovely. I just have a couple of questions about the breath. Okay. My understanding is that it's really good to practice early in the morning, like first thing in the morning. And I just wondered, are there any advantages to standing rather than sitting? I think, or lying down. What would you recommend is the best way to do it for sort of maximum?
For humming bee breath?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a definitive right or wrong, but there are certain things to consider. So if you want this breath to be somewhat calming, standing upright means that your body has to mobilize more energy. So I might suggest that you are sitting up rather than standing. Now, if you lie down, what happens is the vibration that's going to happen in your lungs is ever so slightly stultified by the fact that you're just against the ground. So I think it's probably useful to do it in a sitting position. But if you need to do it in lying, or somebody else needs to do it in lying, I don't think it's an issue, but the vibration will be slightly different throughout the system.
Excellent. And just one other thing. I'm not sure if this is true, but my understanding was that if you're pregnant, it's not advisable to do the breath. Is that correct?
I always advise people around questions regarding pregnancy to somebody else, because I don't teach any pregnancy yoga, and I always feel awkward that I might give the wrong advice. I would ask an expert. The person that I go to on my team, and she's on my website, on the Minded Institute website, is Shweta Panchal. There's also Francois Freeman, who owns Birthlight and is internationally recognized for her work in pregnancy yoga. I just don't think that I could comment.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
I know, so that I don't give misinformation.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. And Mary Rose, you're next. Mary Rose, go ahead.
Hi, just wanted to thank you for the beautiful, absolutely beautiful, so thank you. What I noticed when I was pausing today, even though I quite enjoy pausing, I really met my anxiety.
Yes.
A little bit more acuter than I normally do. It settled as we moved on. So I suppose in what I've heard from you over the time in your teachings is you need a little bit more time. I might have given up if I'd have been on my own, or I might have not stayed with the pausing as long as we did for the whole session.
Yeah, and there's a variety of reasons for why that can happen. I mean, one thing that we all do in a daily life is if we don't want to face something, is we keep busy. So when we have pauses, stuff that is under the surface will rise. So that's one thing. The other might just, there's a lot of movement with you, Mary Rose. Just the other might be that there was just some kind of fear around the waiting and the breath today. That can also happen. So it can be a variety of causing the exact same experience. And I would just say, if you settled into at the end, fine. And if you feel it's not something you want to do without guidance, then don't do it. You've learned a lot of different breath practices from me, and go with what your instinct tells you is going to work. I always think that the sign of a developed practice is the willingness to meet the mind with all of the different things that it presents, because it's not the same thing all the time. There isn't a panacea. Just do this and that will always work. So we have to be flexible, but also in that, not say, oh, this isn't working right now, I'm going to jump to that, then jump to that. It's like we really try, we sit with, and then we acknowledge the challenge and that maybe it's not useful in this moment.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and I'll echo the other first person who asked the question. This is a lovely package you put together. You know where I'm going with this question.
No, I don't, actually.
I think it's a lovely thing that you do, the hybrid you've brought together. I don't mean to insult it by that, but you know, your knowledge, your expertise.
Thank you. So,
And it's a lovely one that could be offered. It's an easy one to move into, you know, because I'm not a yoga girl, and it's easy to come into. So
the question when I train people to engage in this method of teaching, is that the question?
I'm kind of on that, yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit challenging to train people in this method without doing a lot of training with me, because my knowledge of mindfulness comes from living 3 years in silent retreat. So it comes from a deep well of personal practice. I don't know if I could impart that easily. I mean, I could impart how I do it in the pieces, but people would need to show up with practice, especially during the questions that others have.
Yeah, because my mindful practice is from a taught one, not a lived one. So yeah, I see where you're going. I understand, but thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all. And if there are no more questions, I'm going to go about my day and wish you all well. And as I mentioned, there will be another retreat next weekend. I will not be delivering it. It will be a very different style, I imagine, but maybe beautiful in its own right. And I will be back offering my own retreat in a few weeks again and doing some of the morning and evening breath practices this week. Take good care of yourself. Bye.